we didn't set out to make the biggest game we've ever done. We set out to tell this really ambitious story that became the biggest game we've ever done, and that's why we took as long as we have to come out and then finally announce the date. You've played about 2 to 3 hours of the game, and then you saw like a 10-minute section of the game at E3. That is a tiny fraction of how big this game is. Like, I'm not exaggerating. This is by far Naughty Dog's biggest game we've ever done. The story we laid out now 4 years ago, I think, is really complex. It has a large cast of characters. Its core of it is simple, but where it goes and the twists and turns are complex. We needed more time for cinematic. We needed more locations. We needed like more types of enemies. So the scope of it just kept growing, and it's not padded. Like, it has that pacing of the first game. It's going to, like, you're going on this crazy emotional harrowing roller coaster ride that has these highs of tension and these like kind of like slower, more provocative, thoughtful moments, as you saw in the first demo, like between Ellie and Dina. Those kind of events are sprinkled throughout the entire game. You've seen the last couple of games, Uncharted 4 and Lost Legacy, how we've played around with much larger spaces than in previous games, and we're continuing that philosophy here. But unlike, let's say, an open world game that is usually open all the time, that game doesn't work for us for The Last of Us because that loses tension. For example, like if I need to go rescue someone, if someone's in trouble and says, okay, go rescue them right now, or do these 10 other things here on the side, you lose tension. But there's something interesting about that freedom of exploring, like I could go there, I see each location. So depending on where we are with the story, we might open things up significantly and say, okay, here are some optional things. You could go explore some side stories, or you could go directly next to like where you're meant to go. But the tension is not high. And as the tension ratchets it up, we might tighten things up. You might play a very scripted, authored Naughty Dog set piece. And we just know like we can go in both directions according to the needs of the story. Our DNA is very much you playing with an ally. And I would say for a big part of this game, you're playing with an ally. Now, who that ally is and how that switches across the game, it's like we want to preserve as much as we can for when you actually get your hands on it. But expect the next iteration of how we use kind of mechanics and cinematics and your allies to tell a story in new and interesting ways.
Want every building in the area searched.
There's a breadth of mechanics you could use that lay out a lot of verticality, which is new to this franchise, to make Ellie, I think, one of the most traversable, fluid, grounded character in any game out there. Those were our goals. Okay, so Ellie is physically smaller, but she's more agile and nimble and acrobatic, and we felt like, okay, so the first thing was like we could have a dedicated jump button. The first game did not really have a jump. So now we can create verticality. Ellie can get to heights, get to second floors, as you saw in the second demo. A lot of it is about evading enemies by moving around them, on top of them, sometimes going on basements below them. And the other aspect that quickly came to mind is this idea of a dodge button. So as you're being meleeed by one or multiple enemies, you could evade those hits by quickly moving around. Or if you're being shot at, you can quickly juke, and that would lower the accuracy of the shooter. And then the other kind of big feature as far as like Ellie's movement is that she can go prone. So you can crouch, and that makes you quiet, or you can go all the way down to the ground and then crawl into grass. And we have this concept of analog stealth, so the more you're hidden, the lower to the ground you are, the harder it is for an enemy to spot you. Now, if you're in grass, you're never fully hidden, unlike some of the stuff you've seen in other games, even from one of our games. So it's really about assessing where the enemies are at, how much are they seeing, how are they acquiring you, and using grass in those areas as transitional elements to get behind more hidden occluders. The goals in The Last of Us are kind of the same, but this is the next iteration of that, which is how do we, at least for the human characters, humanize them in a way that makes them more threatening, but also makes you feel a little dirty when you're killing them. We rewrote a lot of their perception from scratch. So how they see the environment, how they look at windows and doors that can open and close as you're playing the setups, is totally revamped. How they communicate with each other is much more sophisticated, where they could call out locations, they could coordinate to, let's say, flank a house, and then they refer to each other by name. If you shoot and kill someone, the person next to them could have been their friend, and now they're agitated, now they're going to yell and react differently. And then the other thing you saw in the demo is another iteration of we could have for human characters is they walk around with dogs. So this group, the WLF that controls Seattle, has bred and trained dogs to sniff out trespassers. You, Ellie, being new to Seattle, you're a trespasser. So dogs can pick up on your scent, and even though you're hiding somewhere and normally you wouldn't be seen, a dog could slowly lead its owner to you, and then guys can be on top of you. And dogs are also interesting in that, again, I don't know if you felt this, but we often feel this when we play it. It's like, it feels pretty messed up to kill a dog, especially when you hear it yelp and do all that stuff. So you're left with this situation of like, okay, do I want to try to ghost this whole setup? Which you didn't have to kill a single dog in this scenario. I don't know if anybody did that here, but you don't have to. Or do you want to say, okay, I'm overwhelmed, I could shoot an arrow into this dog, then take out that owner, and then go around this way. So the strategies you could take and the options in the layouts are much greater than we've done in the previous game. So with that, I'll just say you saw a few things in this demo. There's a lot more to see in the world for The Last of Us.